What drove a lone monk to cross the world's highest peaks, carrying a truth that reshaped a nation? Meet Atisha, whose journey to Tibet ignited a Buddhist revolution. Why did his Kadampa teachings captivate hearts, turning suffering into wisdom? If you're new to Buddhism and seeking a path to inner peace, this is your moment. Unravel the mystery of Atisha's legacy with us. Stay tuned, your journey starts now. The flame over the mountain. The sun hung low over the jagged peaks of the Himalayas, casting a golden veil across the endless expanse of snow and stone. In the year 1042, a solitary figure moved through the high passes, his robes fluttering like the wings of a weary bird against the biting wind. This was Atisha, the great teacher from the ancient land of India, whose heart burned with a quiet fire, a resolve to carry the Buddha's teachings across the world's rooftop to the land of Tibet. His steps were steady, though the path was treacherous, each footfall a testament to a vow made long ago under the Bodhi tree's sacred shade. What drove a man of such wisdom, a scholar of Nalanda's hallowed halls, to leave behind the lush plains of Bengal for this unforgiving wilderness? The answer lay not in ambition, but in a vision of a world where suffering could be met with compassion, where ignorance could be pierced by wisdom's gentle light. Atisha was no ordinary monk. Born into royalty in the kingdom of Zahor, he had forsaken palaces for the pursuit of truth, trading silks for saffron robes. His mind, honed by decades of study, held the vastness of the Buddha's sutras like a lotus cradling dew. Yet, it was not knowledge alone that propelled him northward. It was a call, a whisper from the heart of Tibet, where a fractured land yearned for the Dharma's healing touch. The Tibetans, fierce and devout, had embraced Buddhism centuries before, but their practice was a tapestry of beauty and chaos, woven with devotion, yet tangled by misinterpretations. Atisha's mission was to mend this tapestry, to weave the golden threads of the Kadampa tradition into its fabric, a tradition that would steady the hearts of generations to come. But how does one man, no matter how wise, reshape a nation's soul? The answer, as you'll soon see, lies not in force, but in the quiet power of presence. As Atisha crossed the final pass into Tibet, the wind seemed to carry voices, ancient mantras mingling with the cries of a people seeking guidance. He paused, his breath visible in the frigid air, and gazed upon the valley below. Monastic fires flickered like stars against the twilight, and the distant chant of monks rose like a tide. This was Ngari, the western kingdom where his journey would begin. The ruler, Yeshe-O, had sent for him, a king whose heart was as vast as his realm. Yeshe-O had once been a warrior, his hands stained with the dust of conquest, but now he sought a different victory, one over the darkness of ignorance. He had heard of Atisha's renown, of his ability to distill the Buddha's teachings into a path both profound and practical. And so, the king had sent emissaries across mountains and rivers, their plea simple yet urgent: come to Tibet, bring the light of the Dharma. What must it have felt like, standing at the edge of a new world, knowing the weight of such a summons? Atisha's heart, though calm, was not untouched by doubt. He was no stranger to hardship. His years at Nalanda had been marked by rigorous debate, his travels through India fraught with peril. But Tibet was a land of mystery, its people as untamed as its peaks. Yet, as he descended into the valley, his mind turned to the Buddha's words: "Go forth for the good of the many." This was not a journey of conquest, but of offering. And oh, how that offering would spark a flame that no wind could extinguish. Let us follow him now, down the rocky paths into the heart of a land poised for transformation. The first monastery Atisha reached was small, its walls weathered by centuries of snow. The monks greeted him with wide eyes, their faces a mixture of awe and curiosity. To them, he was not just a man but a living sutra, a bridge between the India of the Buddha and their own rugged home. Atisha sat among them, his voice soft yet resonant, like a bell struck in a quiet dawn. He spoke not of lofty metaphysics, but of the heart's simple truths. Compassion as the root, wisdom as the flower. This was the essence of the Kadampa way, a path that married the mind's clarity with the heart's warmth. The monks listened, their breath held, as if each word were a drop of nectar. But what was it about these teachings that made their hearts race, that kept them leaning closer, unable to turn away? Atisha's genius lay in his ability to make the profound accessible. He taught the 7-point mind training, a practice that would become the cornerstone of the Kadampa tradition. Imagine this, a teaching so clear it could guide a nomad herding yaks, yet so deep it could challenge a scholar's pride. Transform adversity into the path of awakening, he said, his eyes alight with a fire that warmed the cold hall. When suffering arises, embrace it as a teacher. These were not mere words. They were keys to unlock the mind's hidden potential. The monks scribbled notes, their fingers trembling not from the cold, but from the thrill of understanding. And as they listened, something shifted within them. A spark of realization that the Dharma was not a distant ideal, but a living force, here and now. But Atisha's work was not without resistance. Some lamas, steeped in older traditions, eyed him warily. They saw his emphasis on discipline and compassion as a challenge to their rituals, their tantric practices woven with mysticism. One evening, as the stars pierced the Tibetan sky, a lama named Drumtonpa approached Atisha. Drumtonpa was no ordinary disciple. He was a man of fierce intellect, his questions sharp as a blade. "Why simplify the Dharma?" he asked, his voice tinged with defiance. "Is not the path of Tantra enough?" Atisha smiled, his gaze steady. "Tantra is a swift path," he replied. "But without the foundation of compassion and wisdom, it is a house built on sand." Drumtonpa fell silent, his heart stirred by the truth in those words. And in that silence, a bond was forged. A bond that would carry the Kadampa teachings far beyond that night. What happened next was nothing short of a quiet revolution. Atisha traveled from monastery to monastery, his teachings spreading like ripples across a still lake. He wrote The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, a text so luminous it would guide Tibetan Buddhism for centuries. Its words were simple, yet electric. Cherish all beings as a mother cherishes her only child. Who could resist such a call? The lamas, the nomads, the kings. They all felt it. That pull towards something greater, something that made their hearts beat faster. Atisha's presence was a catalyst, igniting a longing for awakening that no one could ignore. But the journey was far from over. Tibet was vast, its challenges many, and Atisha's path would soon lead him deeper into the land's heart, where greater trials and greater triumphs awaited. As the moon rose over Ngari, casting silver light on the monastery's roof, Atisha sat in meditation, his breath a rhythm of peace. The wind outside howled, but within him was stillness. He knew the work ahead would test his resolve, but he also knew the Dharma's power to transform. And so, dear watcher, let us pause here, at the edge of this moment, with Atisha poised to change a nation. What trials will he face? What hearts will he touch? The story is far from finished, and the path ahead is as winding as the Himalayan trails. Stay with me, for the next steps will reveal a truth that burns brighter than the stars above, the river of compassion. The Tibetan sky stretched vast and endless, a canvas of indigo pierced by stars that seemed to whisper secrets of the cosmos. Atisha, now settled in the heart of Ngari, felt the weight of his mission settle deeper into his bones. The monasteries hummed with new energy, their halls alive with monks chanting his words, but the path ahead was not a straight one. Tibet was a land of contrasts, its people fierce yet tender, their faith profound yet tangled in the vines of old habits. Atisha's teachings, like seeds cast into rocky soil, needed time to take root. And yet, as he walked the dusty paths between villages, his heart pulsed with a quiet certainty. The Dharma could transform even the wildest of hearts. What was it about this man, this lone wanderer from India, that made shepherds pause their work, that drew warriors to sit at his feet? Let us step closer into the firelight of his presence to see how a single spark could set a nation ablaze. Atisha's days were filled with teaching, his voice a steady stream that flowed into the minds of those who gathered. In a small village near Tholing Monastery, he sat beneath a gnarled juniper tree, its branches twisting like the questions in his listeners' hearts. The crowd was a tapestry of Tibet's soul. Monks in saffron, nomads with wind-carved faces, and women clutching prayer beads, their eyes bright with hope. Atisha spoke of the Four Noble Truths, but not as dry doctrine. He wove them into stories, each word a thread pulling his audience closer. Suffering is not a curse, he said, his voice soft as a breeze, yet sharp as a blade. It is a mirror, showing us where we cling, where we can let go. A young herder, his hands rough from years of guiding yaks, nodded slowly, as if a door in his mind had creaked open. Who could turn away from such clarity, such a promise of freedom? But clarity alone was not enough. Atisha knew that Tibet's spiritual soil was rich but uneven. Some lamas clung to esoteric rituals, their practices shrouded in mystery, while others preached devotion without discipline. Atisha's Kadampa path demanded balance, a marriage of heart and mind, of compassion and wisdom. In the candlelit hall of Tholing, he introduced the 6 perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom. Each was a step on the path to awakening, a rung on a ladder that anyone could climb. Give without expecting reward, he urged, his eyes sweeping the room. Hold patience as a shield against anger. The monks scribbled furiously, their quills scratching like the wind on stone. But it was not just the monks who felt the pull. A merchant, his robes heavy with the dust of trade routes, lingered after the teaching, his heart racing with a question he dared not ask. Could a man of the world truly walk this path? Atisha's answer came not in words but in action. One dawn, as mist curled over the valley, he joined the villagers in rebuilding a crumbled stupa. His hands, accustomed to turning the pages of ancient texts, now lifted stones alongside theirs. The villagers watched, astonished, as the great scholar worked without complaint, his robes streaked with mud. "This is the Dharma," he said, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow. Not in words alone, but in every act of care. The merchant, who had followed Atisha to the site, felt his chest tighten, not with doubt, but with awe. Here was a teacher who lived his teachings, whose every step was a lesson. And as the stupa rose, stone by stone, so too did the villagers trust in Atisha's vision. How could they not follow a man who made the sacred so tangible, so alive? Yet, not all hearts were so easily won. In the shadowed halls of power, some lamas whispered against him. They saw his emphasis on simplicity as a threat to their authority, his call for compassion as a rebuke to their rituals. One evening, in a monastery perched on a cliff like an eagle's nest, a senior lama confronted Atisha. His name was Rinchen Zangpo, a translator of sacred texts, revered for his learning but proud of his stature. "Your teachings are too plain," Rinchen Zangpo said, his voice echoing in the hall. "The Dharma is vast, complex. Why reduce it to words a child could grasp?" Atisha's response was a smile, gentle yet unyielding. "The Dharma is like a river," he said. "It may be vast, but it must flow to reach all shores. If it stays locked in complexity, who will drink from it?" Rinchen Zangpo's eyes narrowed, but a flicker of doubt crossed his face. And in that flicker, a seed was planted, one that would grow, though not without struggle. Atisha's greatest ally in this struggle was Drumtonpa, the fierce disciple who had once challenged him but now stood by his side. Drumtonpa was a bridge between worlds, a Tibetan who understood his people's heart yet grasped the depth of Atisha's vision. Together, they traveled deeper into Tibet, to the central lands of Yu and Sang, where the Dharma's roots were older but its branches tangled. In the bustling town of Sami, Tibet's first monastery, Atisha faced a new challenge, a community divided by competing schools of thought. Some monks favored the sudden path of enlightenment, seeking instant awakening through meditation. Others clung to gradual practices, their days filled with rituals. Atisha stood before them, his presence a calm amidst the storm. "Sudden or gradual, the path is one," he said. "Awakening begins with a single step, compassion for another." His words were a lightning bolt, splitting the fog of debate. The monks leaned forward, their hearts stirred by a truth they could not deny. As months turned to years, Atisha's teachings began to weave a new thread into Tibet's spiritual tapestry. The Kadampa tradition took root, its emphasis on practical wisdom and heartfelt compassion spreading like wildfire. Monasteries adopted his lamp for the path to enlightenment, its verses memorized by monks and lay people alike. "See all beings as your kin," it urged, and in those words, Tibetans found a call to unity. Kings and nomads, scholars and herders, they all felt the pull, the electric thrill of a path that promised liberation, not just for the self, but for all. Atisha's presence was a magnet, drawing hearts together, yet the journey was far from complete. Greater challenges loomed. Rivalries among lamas, the vastness of Tibet's uncharted lands, and the question of how to ensure the Kadampa flame would burn long after Atisha's time. As he sat one evening by a flickering butter lamp, Atisha traced the lines of a new text in his mind. The words were forming, a guide for generations yet to come. Outside, the wind sang through the valleys, carrying the echo of his teachings. The stars above seemed to pulse with the same rhythm as his heart, a rhythm of hope, of possibility. What would become of this land, this people, this Dharma? The answer lay not in the stars, but in the steps Atisha would take next, steps that would lead him to the heart of Tibet's greatest trials and its deepest awakenings. Dear watcher, the path grows steeper now, the stakes higher. Will you walk with me further to see how a single man's vision could reshape a nation's soul, the lamp that never fades? The Tibetan dawn broke with a fierceness that matched the land itself, painting the sky in hues of fire and gold. Atisha, now a familiar figure across the valleys of Yu and Sang, moved with the same quiet resolve that had carried him over the Himalayas years before. His hair was streaked with silver, his steps slower, yet his eyes burned with an undimmed light, a light that seemed to pierce the very veil of illusion. The Kadampa teachings had taken root, their seeds sprouting in monasteries and villages, but Tibet was vast, its people as varied as the winds that swept its plains. Atisha knew his time was finite, his body a temporary vessel, yet his mission was eternal. To plant a Dharma so resilient it would endure beyond his breath. What force could sustain such a vision? What alchemy could turn a single man's words into a legacy that would echo through centuries? Let us walk with him now, through the final steps of his journey, to witness the flowering of a tradition that would reshape Tibet's soul. In the bustling town of Nathang, near the sacred grounds of Lhasa, Atisha found a new home. The monastery there was modest, its walls unadorned, but its simplicity suited him. Here, he gathered his closest disciples, chief among them Tantric, whose fierce loyalty had grown into a wisdom that mirrored his teachers. Atisha's teachings now focused on legacy, on ensuring the Kadampa path would not fade like a footprint in snow. He taught the Lojong, the mind-training practices that turned every moment into an opportunity for awakening. See all obstacles as your guru, he told his disciples, his voice steady as the earth beneath them. Let every hardship polish the mirror of your mind. The words were like sparks, igniting a fire in the hearts of those who listened. A young monk, his face still soft with youth, felt his pulse quicken as he realized the truth. The Dharma was not confined to temples. It lived in every thought, every breath. But Atisha's work was not without its shadows. The lamas who had once resisted him grew bolder, their whispers turning to open challenges. In a grand monastery near Shigaise, a council of scholars gathered, their robes a sea of crimson and gold. They questioned Atisha's methods, his insistence on simplicity over ritual, his call for compassion over esoteric power. One lama, his voice sharp with pride, stood and declared, "Your path is too humble for Tibet's great Tantric traditions. Why strip the Dharma of its mystery?" Atisha, seated calmly, met the lama's gaze with eyes that held no anger, only clarity. "Mystery is a veil," he said, "but truth is the light behind it. Compassion and wisdom are the wings of awakening. Without them, no ritual can soar." The room fell silent, the lama's face softening as doubt gave way to wonder. Who could resist such a truth, delivered with the gentleness of a lotus unfolding? Atisha's words were not his only weapon. His presence, his very being, was a teaching. In villages, he knelt with mothers to bless their children, his hands gentle as he traced mantras in the air. In markets, he shared tea with traders, listening to their tales of distant lands with the same attention he gave to sacred texts. Each act was a thread in the tapestry he wove, a tapestry that bound Tibetans together in a shared vision of awakening. The nomads began to carry his teachings across the steppes, chanting Om Mani Padme Hum with a new understanding, their voices rising like a tide. The kings, too, felt the pull. Rulers who once wielded swords now built stupas, their hearts stirred by Atisha's call to cherish all beings. And as the Kadampa tradition spread, it was Tantric who ensured its roots grew deep, founding Radrang Monastery as a beacon of Atisha's vision. But how does a teaching endure when its teacher's time draws near? The answer lay in the hearts Atisha had touched, hearts that now beat with the rhythm of the Dharma. One crisp autumn day, as leaves fell like golden prayers, Atisha sat by a stream, its waters glinting under the sun. His disciples gathered close, sensing the weight of the moment. He spoke of impermanence, his voice soft yet piercing. "This body will fade, as all things do," he said. "But the Dharma is a flame that never dies. Carry it with you, not as words, but as a way of being." Tantric, his eyes glistening, vowed to protect the Kadampa lineage, to ensure its teachings would guide generations. The disciples felt a surge of resolve, their hearts racing with the thrill of purpose. Atisha's words were not a farewell, but a beginning, a call to make the Dharma their own. And in that moment, under the vast Tibetan sky, they knew. His legacy was not in texts or temples, but in the awakening he had sparked within them. As Atisha's final days approached, he remained in Nathang, his body frail, but his spirit radiant. He meditated by the monastery's altar, his breath a quiet mantra, his presence a lamp that lit the hearts of all who came. The villagers brought offerings, not of gold, but of prayers, their voices weaving a chorus of gratitude. When Atisha passed into parinirvana in 1054, the air seemed to hum with his teachings, as if the wind itself carried his words. Tibet was transformed, not by force, but by the gentle power of a man who saw all beings as kin. The Kadampa tradition flourished, its principles of compassion and wisdom becoming the foundation for schools like Gelug, which would later birth the Dalai Lamas. Dromtonpa, true to his vow, nurtured Radrang Monastery, ensuring Atisha's lamp for the path would shine for centuries. And so, dear watcher, we stand at the end of Atisha's journey. Yet it is not an end, but a beginning. His teachings ripple still in the chants of monks, the prayers of nomads, the quiet moments when a heart turns toward compassion. Can you feel it? The pulse of his vision, the call to awaken. It lives in you too, in every choice to act with kindness, to seek wisdom amidst suffering. Atisha's path was never his alone. It is yours, mine, ours. The Himalayas still stand, their peaks piercing the sky, and the Dharma flows like a river through them. Will you take the next step, carry the flame forward? The story is yours now, and its light waits only for your breath to make it burn brighter.